success factors of Jack Welch. Unfortunately, at the end, Jack Welch been criticized negatively because of the downsizing, but he was really the talent people heroes. And usually, weak people, they hire weak people because they want to flourish. They don't like, they don't want their fame, to disappear. They want to remain always the stars. But I kept saying, smart people, they hire smart people and they make them grow. Can you imagine? Some of the leaders will stay as they are, will stay in that level. They won't go any further. They might even go down because they step into the shoulders of their followers. Try to imagine when somebody steps in your shoulder, so you're going down and the leader going down. But the smart leader, he pushes his people up, he pushes his followers up, so when they go up, he's in their shoulder, so they go up. It is just natural. Leadership is a natural science. Jack Welch said, the smart people in the world hire the smarter people in the world. It is true and straightforward. We kept saying also that nations rise and falls because of the leadership. Unfortunately, so many nations in the world, so many countries in the world, they rise and they fall because of their leaderships. And we had so many examples nowadays, politically and socially. Working for some leaders, it is as painful as taking a full dose of poison. That's why I call them the toxic leaders. When you work for that person, like you are taking a full dose of poison. What are the characteristics of the toxic leaders? How to spot them in the organization? Toxic leaders, they are rigid, in their commitment. They usually have very idealized goals, not smart goals, but very idealized goals. Like it's a wishful thinking list. They won't go out from that list. They are very rigid in their vision. They don't want to change. And they make the followers suffer in that case because nobody can achieve those goals. They are very idealized. I took that statement. By the way, I made my one of my latest research about toxic leaders. Unfortunately, there are no many books written about toxic leaders. There are hardly 3 or 4 books worldwide wrote about toxic leaders, but there are a few articles. You can find them in the Google. You go through toxic leaders, you'll find a few journals published, a few articles. Hopefully you will find one of my articles also there. Toxic leaders, whether you are with me or you are against me. If you are not with me, you are against me. This reminds me of the most smartest, with due respect to my American colleague, the most smartest American President, George Bush, the son, during 9/11, when he called in his famous statement, you are with me or you are against me. So that is toxic leader. And definitely, he was a toxic leader. talking HR, not politics. Huh? The toxic leader is arrogant in mind. He thinks he's right. Whatever he will do, he will try to convince you that he was right, though that he is wrong. He knows that he is wrong. But he thinks that people will believe him when he said he's right. Another toxic leader is Tony Blair. For those of you who read his book, his latest book, he thinks he's right. He knows that he's wrong, but he tried to convince himself, he tried to convince the other that he's right. This is what I call arrogant mind. Of course, the toxic leaders prefer followers who will say, yes, sir. And he will pretend that he takes opinion of his followers. I mean, he will call them, he say, well, I would like to take your opinion. Can you come over? But definitely, I mean, he takes their opinion because he knows very well that they will tell him, yes, sir. They will tell him, yes, you are right, sir. It happened with me, in my organization. Because I wear different hats. And I'm talking here from experience, by the way. In my official organization, I mean, you can see, I mean, like, big guys, they telling the boss, yes, you are right. And one day, in fact, I was sitting next to that person, and he told our boss, yes, you are right, sir. I told him, it's not right. I whispered, I said, it's not right. He said, shut up. Trust me. The boss, he's the prime minister of our country. And that person, he was a minister. He told me, shut up. He knows he was not right. And then afterwards, I said, why you told him you are right? He said, what do you want me to say? You want me to lose my job? He takes credit for himself. It's just, a common sense. He will never say, it is Muhammad or Abdullah or Ibrahim who have done this thing. He said, I've done this thing. To the extent, some of them, I mean, they will take the report that you make, they'll simply, raise your name, they put their name, and then they will submit it. They put blame to others. When there is a risk, they will never say it's their mistake. They will say, well, unfortunately, that is Muhammad who made the mistake. Especially if there's a mistake. And they have new definitions for mistakes. They are very good in finding new definitions. I think they are the creator of definitions, usually. Whenever there is a mistake, or the organization is not going in the right direction, or, during the AGM, results were not really achieved. They have always definition. Natural crisis, terrorism, whatever, I mean, you can name it. What is the negative effect of the toxic leaders on organization and on people? The followers or the team or the employees, they fear the leaders. They are not loyal to the leader, but because of the fear, they're not loyal, not even to the organization. There is difference between loyalty with fear and loyalty with passion, with love. Of course, I mean, toxic leader will demoralize the employee. Employee will not be happy to go to work. Employee will not be happy to perform. This will affect even his personal life, the personal life of the employee. When he goes out of work, it will affect his family life, it will affect his friendship with others. Employees will lack creativity. They will lack initiative. They will not be able to suggest ideas or to be creative because there are fear. There is a fear of making mistakes. And naturally, I mean, there will be a decline in productivity because of the toxic leaders. And for those who will stay with the toxic leaders, unfortunately, they will start to exercise unethical behavior. Like my friend, when he told me, shut up. So they will start eventually to adapt wrong behaviors and unethical behavior that can lead into corruptions, probably. Because he wants to survive, he wants to stay in that organization, he has no choice. He cannot leave the organization. So he has to adjust his behavior alongside with the toxic leaders. And this will lead to unethical behavior. It will lead the organization into corruption. Incompetent, of course. The toxic leader is a person who is not competent. Otherwise, things will be in the normal track. As we said, he's rigid. He cannot adapt changes. He lacks the self-control. One day you will see him happy, cheerful, smiling, coming all the way to you, very humble, shaking hands and joking with you. Another day, probably you'll say, good morning, sir. He will hardly answer you. There is something going on in his mind. Of course, the toxic leader might be corrupted because he'll put his self-interest ahead of any public interest. I'm sure now you are thinking about some personalities in organizations or in the world, when I'm referring to these things. The toxic leaders, they can be evils to the extent they might harm the followers, probably physically. I think it's common here. He can, especially those who are connected with authorities or with police, or they can harm the person psychologically. And we said, when they harm the person psychologically, because it will affect the person family life. It will affect, everything around him. Now let's take a few hints how to survive when you face a toxic leader in your organization. Never confront the toxic leader. My first advice, toxic leaders should not be confronted. Stay away from that person because he can harm you easily. So if you want to survive, stay away from that leader. And whenever you have an issue, work-wise, or a subject, or a feedback, try to choose the right time and the right place. Don't talk to him or her in public. Okay, 15 minutes. Strengthening the relationship with other executives. Try, to have a good relationship with your fellow managers or executives. So you will team up against the toxic leader. Off duty, try to nurture your self-esteem by going to, exercising. The minute you leave the office, you go